Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 67, Euthyphro 15c to 16a. After the second refutation of Euthyphro's second definition of the holy, we can expect a third one. So let's see how Socrates elicits a third definition of the holy from Euthyphro. Ex arches arhebin palin skepteon tiesti to hosion, hos ego prinan matho hekon enai uk apodeliaso. From the beginning, then, we should again ask, what is tohosion, the holy, as I shall not shirk from being willing before I understand it or learn it. That last part seems to me very strange, and in Greek it's very strange. There is a word which shouldn't really be there, the infinitive to be, enai, and without it, Socrates is saying that he won't shy away willingly before understanding or learning. Socrates is laying it on thick that he won't give up until he has a proper answer. But he's just said this after making a very worrying statement that they have to start from the beginning and again examine what is the holy. We may imagine that Euthyphro isn't very happy now, and this is really confirmed by the fact that he doesn't answer here. And Socrates has to carry on, trying to persuade Euthyphro to answer. Ala me atimases, ala panti troppo proschonton nun hotimalista nun epeten alethean. Don't disrespect me, but in every way, paying attention as much as possible, tell me now the truth. Euthyphro still doesn't answer, and Socrates has to carry on. Oisthegar epertis alos anthropon, kai uk apheteos hosper hoprotius prin an epes. For you know, if any man does, and you are not to be let go of, just like Proteus, before you speak, or rather, before you tell me. Proteus is an ancient sea god who is known for telling the truth, but someone who doesn't like to tell people anything, and they have to force him to do it by holding on to him while he keeps changing shapes. He can change into anything he wants, but eventually he gives up, and then he will tell you what you want to know. So Socrates is making Euthyphro look like Proteus, someone who keeps changing, but Socrates is not going to give up, and he will hold on to Euthyphro until he tells him the truth. Changing has been a theme throughout the dialogue, and itself, this changing has changed from Socrates being the one who makes words and arguments change because he's like Daedalus, to Euthyphro, who is now like Proteus. He's the one who is changing. He himself changes, unlike Socrates, who made arguments change. Although we know that, in fact, what changes in this dialogue is the course of the argument, depending on the question Socrates asks and the way Euthyphro answers them. And in the end, the definitions of the holy are refuted. It isn't clear at all that Euthyphro himself changes his mind. He simply isn't all that clear about what the holy is. He does have a very clear idea about the relationship between humans and gods and the danger of miasma, pollution. But when it comes to this term, tohosion, the holy, Euthyphro has a small problem. He cannot give an answer which is not refuted, and for this reason he blames Socrates for making the arguments change. And Socrates did accept that he was responsible. He was like Daedalus in making words move. But now Socrates is saying that Euthyphro himself is like Proteus, who keeps changing, but it's for a different reason. You keep changing as Proteus in order not to tell the truth. And Socrates is keeping up the pretense that he thinks that Euthyphro knows, and Euthyphro simply doesn't want to tell him what the holy is. It's ironic that this lie that Socrates thinks that Euthyphro knows is the only thing which is constant in this dialogue. Well, I say that's the only thing that's constant. We may find a couple of other things which have been constant throughout the dialogue, but we'll talk about them next time. In the meantime, Euthyphro is still not answering, and Socrates seems to have decided that Euthyphro isn't going to give a third definition of the holy, and so he begins to be slightly more aggressive in an attempt to make Euthyphro think. This is a last-ditch attempt to make Euthyphro consider what he is doing in his life. Eigar mei eides ta saphos tote hosion kaito anosion, uk estin hopos an pote epicheresas, huper androste tos andra presputen patera diokathen phonu, ala kaitus theus an edesas parakintonuen, me uk orthos autopoiesois, kaitus anthropus eschunthes. For if you didn't know clearly the holy and the unholy, there's no way you would prosecute for murder on behalf of a man who's a serf, an old man who's your father. But you would both fear the gods and fear putting yourself at risk with the gods, lest you were doing this incorrectly. In other words, lest you were wrong to prosecute your father. So you would both fear the gods, and you would be ashamed in the presence of humans. It's as if Euthyphro is clearly knowledgeable about the holy because he's prosecuting his father and doesn't care what his family or the other citizens think about him prosecuting his father. And it seems that he doesn't really care what the gods think about what he's doing, because he's sure that he's doing the gods' loved thing. By pointing all of this out after Euthyphro's two definitions have been refuted, Socrates might be hoping that Euthyphro will begin to have doubts. What if the gods don't like people who prosecute their fathers? After all, in mythology and in natural tradition, people are supposed to respect their parents. Euthyphro has cherry-picked a few examples where a god overthrows his father, but there are plenty of other cases where children respect their parents. And really comparing himself with Zeus is tantamount to hubris, arrogance. And the gods don't like arrogance. Nunde eu oida hotisophos oie edenai tot hosion kai me. But now I well know that you think that you know clearly the holy and the not. In other words, the unholy. Finally, Socrates adds that little word, think. You think you know. Until now, it was you know the holy, and now you only think you know. Epeun o beltiste Euthyphron, kai me apokrypse hoti autohege. So, tell me, O best man Euthyphro, and don't hide what you believe it to be. Actually, that infinitive we had earlier, to be, would have been better placed here, where we would like to have one. I'm not suggesting that we should amend the text. Anyway, Socrates has all but demanded a new definition of the holy, so Euthyphro has to respond, and he does. Es authistoi nun, O Socrates, nuncar spildo poi kai moi hora apienai. Another time then, Socrates, for now I'm rushing somewhere, and the time has come for me to go away. Socrates must have seen this coming, but he still acts surprised. The fact that he's still talking suggests that he's shouting after Euthyphro, who is walking away. And this is in the Agora. Hoia poieso hetaere, apelpidos me katabalon megales, aperche hen echon, hos parasu mathon tate hosia kai me kai tes pros mele ton graphes apalaxomai, ende examinos ekeno, hoti sophos edi par Euthyphronos tathea gegona, kai hoti uketi hupagnoias autos chediadzo ude kai notomo periauta, kaide kai ton alon bion hoti amenon biosoimen. What are you doing, O companion? You are going away, having cast me down from the great expectation which I had, that having learnt from you about the holy things and the not, in other words, the unholy things, I would rid myself of the writ in the presence of Meletus, showing him that I have become wise from Euthyphro with regard to divine things, and that I am no longer, by ignorance, making things up and innovating about these things, and that I will live the rest of my life better. Assuming that Euthyphro heard all of this while he was going away, this may be another attempt to undermine Euthyphro's confidence in his knowledge. He accepted that he would be able to teach Socrates, and yet here is Socrates saying that he's disappointed. He didn't learn about the holy from Euthyphro. Another small point Socrates adds right at the end, although he talks about the overt reason for learning from Euthyphro about the holy, to make Meletus drop the writ. At the very end, he says that he would also have shown Meletus that he was going to live the rest of his life better. And this final statement hints at what Socrates has been doing throughout the dialogue. He wanted to help Euthyphro live better. Next time, conclusions.